Okay, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on where you are. Today is August 12th, and this is another of our SIG CLI bi-weekly meetings. I've noticed that Eddie is across the entire agenda of ours today, but before we get to him, two announcements. There's a KubeCon virtual EU happening next week. There are day 0 events on Monday, and the rest of the conference or the main conference is happening Tuesday through Thursday. I linked the agenda. I hope to see you there. And due to that fact, we are canceling our next week's Blocker Bug Scrub because obviously the majority of us will be at KubeCon helping dealing with it or presenting at the event. So I'm hoping that we will return to our regular meetings in 2 weeks. And additionally, I'm hoping that in 2 weeks frame, we will do 120 planning. It should be around GA for 119, because if I remember correctly, the dates, the GA is planned for August 25th. So hopefully by then we will know the timeframes for the 120 release. But either way, I think it's reasonable for us to start planning for the next release. I'll definitely send out an email for both the bug scrub cancellation. Well, you should, if you're subscribed to our calendar, you'll get a cancellation email. But I'll send another reminder about the planning for 120 in 2 weeks. So I guess that's pretty much all that I wanted to start with. Eddie mentioned me that we have a ton of newcomers, and so we would like to give you the floor to introduce yourself and tell a little bit about yourself and what you want to work on for SIG CLI.
I'll go ahead and start. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah, loud and clear. Go ahead.
Everyone, good morning. My name is Corey Pratt. I am a DevOps engineer at GoodRx. I'm based in California, and I've been working with Kubernetes for, I want to say, 2 or 3 years now. I kind of started out as a developer, creating home charts for the applications I was writing features for, and then kind of jumped into DevOps full time because Kubernetes, helped me so much, and I found it really interesting. In my contributions as part of the SIG CLI, I want to be able to work on just anything that will make the day-to-day lives for people who use Kubernetes much better. Anything I can do to kind of improve it, because it's something I use every day. So yeah.
Cool. Thanks a lot, and welcome, most importantly. If you have any particular questions, feel free to reach out to myself, Sean, Phil, or Eddie, or the rest of us, either on Slack directly or on the SIG CLI channel, and ping us with your questions
Awesome. We'll do.
or issues that you want to work on.
Yeah.
Hi everyone, I am Abdurrauf from Pakistan, and I started learning Kubernetes as my hobby, and I am here to discuss the additional flag issue that I think we should add in kubectl create command.
Okay, welcome.
Hey, my name is Sheikh and I'm from India. So I recently completed my CCAD exam. So I'm looking forward to contribute on the SIG CLI. This is one of my favorite communities because I always go through the discussion and it's really interesting. Previously, my first contribution to the open source was on the Istio side, and the conversations with the SIG CLI actually helped me contribute to the Istio.
Cool. Welcome. Do we have anyone else that's new that want to introduce themselves? You don't have to be entirely new, but if you feel that you want to introduce yourself because you were only listening over the past couple of times. Also, I wasn't here 2 weeks ago, so I still need to mentally catch up on who's new and who's not. Feel free to speak up.
Hey guys, hey. I'm Oleg from Israel. It's like my fourth time that I am participating in the SIG CLI meeting, and my interest is just to find some bugs, maybe some stuff to fix, because I found that I have some time during the weekend, and that's all from my side.
Cool. Welcome.
Thank you.
We have an amazingly international company today. I'm super happy about it that we have people like literally from almost all the major regions, I would say. We have people from Europe, Israel, North America, India, Pakistan. That's freaking awesome. And probably a couple more that I might have forgotten to mention. Is there anyone else that want to introduce themselves? Okay, hearing none. So with that, again, thank you very much. We are super happy that you joined our SIG. If you have any questions, issues, topics that you want to bring up, feel free to add them to the agenda. And we can cover them during our following meetings. You can ping us on SIG CLI Slack channel or the mailing list, or you can directly approach any of us, and we will be more than happy to help you with issues, and especially for PR reviews. And I'll be speaking here for myself. I'll completely advise you to ping me directly on Slack if you want to have your PRs reviewed sooner than later, because it takes me a while to go through my GitHub notifications, and sometimes I'm slightly overwhelmed with the amount. I'm pretty sure that that's not only to me, but if you keep on pinging me on Slack, I will respond. And I'm pretty sure that there's a couple people that can vouch for that. Even on Slack, it can take a little bit of time, but I'll respond sooner than on through GitHub. Okay, with that out of the way, Eddie, you filled up the entire agenda. There's one topic from me for plugins, but I did not prepare for that one. I need to do it for the next time, so that should cover that one. So Eddie, and the topic of additional flags in kubectl create, coming from Run, most probably.
Yeah, this is, so welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us, of course. This has come up a few times, and it's come up in different PRs and issues. And Abdul actually raised an issue where he addressed a lot of this too. The TLDR is we kind of gimped out kubectl run, and the functionality is missing for some folks that relied on it. And there's just a lot of, oh, we should have this flag back in, we should have this subcommand back in. I think Corey even opened a PR addressing one of these issues. So there's a couple things on here, and it's kind of been stalled for a while. And so I want to open up the discussion to get people's thoughts. I know Phil had a pretty strong opinion on growing out these subcommands with flags, and maybe it's best to start with like what the real purpose of these commands are. Like why are we providing these to developers, and what's the intended behavior for that?
I can talk about that. So there's kubectl runs. Original purpose was to mirror Docker runs so that folks, when Kubernetes was like not something anyone had heard of, that they could just like run a container and see that it ran, and then have similar functionality to Docker run. It originally did, I think, pods, and then when we created deployments, it switched over to deployments. Its intent was never to like provide the full capability of the API or replace like specifying your workloads in a declarative manner. The create commands came along because kubectl run, like people wanted, okay, well, I don't want a pod, I want a job, or I don't want this, or I want that. And so we had all these API workload APIs that were capable of creating pods. And so folks wanted they wanted an imperative command to run their particular API, then with a service, right? And then so then all of a sudden run became this like single imperative command that allows you to do anything you want with the Kubernetes APIs, right, through one command. That was a discoverability nightmare. So then the create commands seem to make more sense. Why don't we have an imperative command per API? I think the create command still didn't. There's still some question about like why do we have these things, and I've never gotten a totally satisfying answer about why we have these imperative commands. The best one I've heard, the two ones I've heard that kind of make sense are, one is in a teaching environment, it gives someone that first day experience, which I think is hard to justify why we have so many flags then, because we don't like teaching you, here's how you run a container, that makes sense. Then once we're adding more and more options, it seems like we're teaching you to do the wrong thing. So that's kind of the one that makes sense. Another one I've heard is debugging. Like I just want to like run a container and attach to it, and it needs to be, you know, just so I have access inside the Kubernetes cluster. And what we said in the past is like for both of those, kubectl run isn't probably the best, isn't optimized for either. Having kubectl run with like a million flags is not a great teaching experience. It doesn't lead you to a declarative API from there, or teach you how to do stuff outside of kubectl run very effectively. For debugging also doesn't make a lot, it's really not optimized for that. Like it should be better integrated with logs and exec and attach and all that sort of stuff, which it supports some of that stuff, but like if you're debugging, you probably don't want to also create a service with the, you know, or have a deployment. You probably just want a pod. So those are the reasons there. The other third reason people have said they want run is because they want to do, because they like the imperative interface, right? Because it's fun and is easy and it mirrors gcloud or AWS CLI or some stuff in OC, I'm guessing. And so I think the answer there is that packages, like a lot of the work that we're doing in customized does a better job of that, right? Rather than saying, okay, why don't we give everyone their flag in the create command? We say, okay, why don't you just create a package, and then like you expose what setters you want, and then you can imperatively set those on the command line. And then you never have to like get any code upstreamed in order to expose, you know, a name prefix as a flag or whatever it is. So that's the background. What is the reason that we need does this fall into those categories? Why not packages? Why not create your own CLI?
So
Like, what's the need?
to shed some more light to what Phil said, for debugging purposes, Lee is working hard on having the kubectl debug command, which is designed to help you fire up a similar pod to the one that you're currently running, or by copying it, or by injecting a sidecar container into your running pod so that you can then debug your particular situation. That would completely bail on the debug argument, because that's not what we want people to be using. I would prefer people interested in debugging their containers focus on debug, reporting their observations, what is missing there, and help to improve that particular one for debugging particularly. For the create, as Phil said, we are currently at a point where we are in danger, sort of repeating the same mistake that we did with run. Run started as simple command, but as we were growing the spectrum of available resources, we were throwing everything into kubectl run, because run was the entry point for people coming to Kubernetes. And that was a mistake, obviously. And create was meant and is still meant as a learning tool, as the first step, as something that you can quickly showcase how to use, how to create a deployment, or any other resources, for blog posts, for tweets, for documentation. That's perfect there. But if you're interested in tweaking your object, that can be ingress, replica set replication controller, or a deployment, then you probably already know the initial, and you're past the initial learning curve. In which case, you should be more looking into tools like Customize, or some kind of a CI/CD flow around building your resources from scratch, rather than building up the create commands. Because yes, I'm on the same boat as Phil is. I don't want to grow create commands to be monster commands like run is these days, where we have a full page of possible options. That's not what we want to have. We want to have simplicity in the first place, because it is the starting place. And most importantly, if a newcomer is coming to Kube and he or she will fire up a Kube create deployment help page, and he will be presented with millions of options, he will go crazy. And that's not what we want to have. We want to help them start, and then eventually push them towards other tools like Customize or similar. So
I think there's a lot on the agenda. I think this one just keeps coming up, and I think the answer we've given in the past too has been, we're open to a new sub project. Like, if someone wants to do this, like if this is important to someone enough to like say, yes, like these create commands are really important for some reason, and we really need them to have a lot of flags, we said, okay, why don't we do a new sub project? It can be its own binary, and then it can evolve, and we can see like how much that really makes sense. I think that would make more sense than continuing to expand the surface area that's in kube control for right now.
Yeah, definitely. I think we also touched this in one of the previous bug scrubs, And the general answer was, it's a case by case. And if you provide us with a very strong case that it does make sense and will be super useful for learning, yes, okay, we can consider adding that. But the default answer will be no. So
I think the action item we need to take out of this is write up why we're not doing these things if we haven't already, and then just link it on the PRs and just say, like, we need a FAQ for the bug scrub issues.
yeah, that would definitely make sense to have the most frequently asked questions being answered in a single place. Eddie, since you're in charge of the bug scrub, do you think you could put together the most frequently popping up questions together, and then we can collaborate on the answers, and then we will put it together in contributing in doc or something like that?
Totally.
Cool.
Plus one to what you guys said. I really want to make sure we nail down a default answer is no, other than special circumstances, because you know how I operate with the policy, right? Like when we have something clear and easy stated, I'm like, okay, this is our stance on this. But unless we figure out like what those special cases are, like education's obviously a good candidate. But yeah, this is going to keep coming up. So it'd be good for us to like button down a real stance on this as a SIG.
I think we did annotations before or something. We did added annotations there because of Istio or some special case. But that's really the exception. And that was because it just didn't make sense as it was. So it was kind of fixing an issue.
I think Corey's been trying to chime in. I see him unmuted. But Corey actually has a PR open to add environment options to create.
Yeah, actually. So before I went ahead and opened up PR for this or tried working on it, I want to take a look at what the thoughts were, and I was looking at the things that were on GitHub that people had reported and how the SIG responded to stuff. This PR that I opened adds the environment variable option, and I wanted to add, full disclaimer, my reasons that I mentioned for including it do include the points that everyone had mentioned previously, like for learning and debugging and stuff. So, and I haven't worked with Kustomize, but in regards to some of the options that were recently added to kubectl create, like the port, replica set, and commands, I feel like I would agree that there are some options in kubectl run that would probably be kind of a bit much, but I feel like the option for environment variables is something that should be included as a part of those core options that are used commonly, like with what I mentioned, the port replica set and all that stuff. So
I think so. Thank you for your PR, by the way, and like I can empathize like stepping into this one because this is a long contentious issue with a lot of history where it's something that a lot of end users want, but or say they want, but I think most users want. I think where we're coming from is having seen a lot of different users ask for issues in this area. There's actually what users really want is something different than what is there today. Kind of like we were saying. So I guess the question to you is like, if you're using this for mostly, do you say teaching or debugging? Which one is the main
both
thing?
Yeah.
So within your organization, is that like kind of what it's about?
Yeah. For myself, in regards to like debugging and stuff, if I'm trying to get a POC out, I mean, I actually still use to create deployment or something. I'll quickly do like kubectl create, a deployment with all the options stuff, and then do an OYAML and like add the dry run option, just kind of get something basic and just kind of adding on to that.
So there is a high cost with adding stuff to Kubernetes and kubectl. It's just a very expensive thing to do, right? Like there's release notes and backwards compatibility guarantees, and once these flags are in there, we can never take them out, right? And that sort of stuff. Like seeing the deprecation for run, like you kind of get an idea, right, of like, if we decided that this was a bad idea, it would take us 18 months to get it out. And not that it is, it's just there's a very high cost, right? For some things, I think that is worth it. Like stuff that goes in apply, I think that cost is worth it because there's so many other tools that depend on it. And it's actually very difficult to get like, for instance, have everyone who depends on apply to download a new tool, right? They just want apply. They don't want to say, oh, here's this other version of apply that has this one feature, therefore I'll get that, right? They just want one. For stuff like this, where it's like, hey, there's this imperative command that I want to run, right? Because this is being invoked directly by an end user and not being invoked by Spinnaker or Tecton or Flux or like any other system, it means that the end user is actually in a good position to just download a different command that does it. And so that for that combination of reasons, it being very high cost to get anything in or out of kube control, and that for this set of commands, that it's pretty low cost for a user just to get a different thing, I guess. My question to you is, if we just created a new project, right, inside like that you could go get and said, okay, like we're going to put the create commands here. They can have much higher fidelity. These are for the users consuming them. Does that solve your problem?
I mean, just thinking out loud, I mean, I feel like my first reaction is kind of that having that other tool or something like that might just add a barrier of entry that is not like attractive to people that would use. Not that it's not the right way to do stuff. More specifically, like another point that I was thinking about was like I saw a comment somewhere where I actually received my CK certification earlier this year and was kind of using run a lot. And then there was a comment in one of the issues somewhere that someone was like, could we actually make a revert? Because I have to take the CK exam and I can't like, I feel like using kube control run would like help or something like that. Yeah. So I feel like I do agree with some points, just going back to it all, that where you're saying that you kind of, the purposes for kube control create is like very limited. But in regards to all the uses that we would actually use kube control create for, the option to add environment variables is something that should, like, in my opinion, something that is as common as specifying the fork or specifying the number of replicas or specifying the command or something like that.
And I think all of those were mistakes. None of those should be flags. I agree with you, right? Like this particular flag is probably on par with the other flags that exist there. And there's probably 20 other flags that are also on par with the other flags that are on there, right? Like image already exists, but maybe like sidecar container, right? Or I don't know. I think there's, like looking at kube control, you can see from run just the number of flags that exist. Like the restart strategy, for instance, maybe one. All these sorts of things. So
I'll go ahead and quickly defend that the flags that we approved to be added to create for now, the majority of them were problems coming from docs across Kubernetes docs. We've been using run way too frequently than we should have. And the problem with removing run or deprecating run for creating everything else is that suddenly our docs are getting so much harder. So this was the main thing, and it is somewhat reasonable to have those. But for env, I'm trying to think how this actually could help you with teaching, but every single time I'm thinking about something, I would probably prefer to have 3, 4, 5 images with that particular environment variable hard-coded for teaching purposes, rather than telling people to do it this way. Also, there's the other option that you create a deployment and then you, for teaching, use kubectl setenv command, which allows you to modify an existing environment variable. So the combination of create deployment, because for example, you want to show different deployment strategies or something like that, you created the basic deployment, and then you, through kubectl setenv, you are changing the deployment, creating newer versions, and that allows you to show the part of deployments, the reverting, and the entire workflow around deployments and kubectl at the same time, without the cost of adding the env to create command.
I mean, I don't know. I think the flags like replicas, right, for debugging, like, do you really need 4 replicas, right?
Yeah.
Or like a lot of these things, it's like the debugging
replicas.
scenario I see is like you want a pod that you have attached, and here's the the image, and then the ones, there's like other flags that make more sense for that, right? Like mounting in your tools as your debug tools as a volume, like through a container image, right? Or like there's some specialized things there that just don't make sense for like a regular just create command.
Right.
And most of the things that make sense for regular command don't make sense for a debug.
Right. That's where the kubectl debug command goes into play, and that's what I'm saying.
And then
yeah.
For teaching, like I think like having like a better teaching command would be just spitting this stuff out into YAML and then piping that to kubectl apply. Right? That's really how we should, like, because then you can go and look and see what's being generated, and it kind of forces you to like actually experience what's happening by default, and then you pipe it to apply, versus it just creating the thing magically and then you having to go get the thing -o YAML to see what's actually happening, and then that won't even show you that like some of these fields are defaulted and some of them aren't. So
and combine that with
for a second.
Yeah,
Sorry,
Brian.
but I used to use the kubectl run command with OYAML and dry run just to spit out, like I'd fill it all out how I wanted it, spit out, get myself a YAML file, then I could tweak it a little bit, and then I would use apply. So I sort of missed that a little bit, and I don't know, I feel like, and I know, speaking as someone who went through the CCAT exam, a lot of the prep tells you to do that. So that's how they, because you have a limited amount of time and you don't necessarily like memorize how to create the YAML. So you just do that, get yourself a template, and then make changes. So I sympathize with that a little bit.
I think, so we could go forward with this. Like, I'm not gonna, if like the majority of users like, I really want this, like, I don't think it's actually what they really want, but I'm not gonna like fight that. I don't have time to like, or I can't like invest the energy in actually doing that, right? Like, Brian, to your point, like doing, like outputting that stuff, it actually fills in like deletion timestamp, which you probably don't want, right? It fills in all this random stuff that you don't want. It fills in, I think it fills in replicas maybe even,
Yep,
or it fills in some weird stuff that you probably don't want. And like, I'd much rather say, let's do a series of generator commands targeted at the exam, right? That's going to spit out exactly what users need to know, right? Without a bunch of stuff they don't.
Yeah, that's
rather
point.
we have to.
Maybe we don't, maybe it isn't that we need to have all these options on the create, but maybe there's some other type of command or even a plugin or something that would just like generate these templates for you based on some options that you provide.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's a lot of legit reasons why people would want to imperatively generate configuration, and I think mainly it's that there's not going to be one generator that solves all those well.
There was this proposal from Phil about having a generic create command which would turn every or the majority of the spec of a any resource into flag so that you could do, I don't know, we called it create v2 or something like that. I think Phil wrote a cap back
Yeah,
couple
I wrote a
months
cap
ago.
and I wrote an implementation too. And we could revisit that. Where I landed on that is I actually found like package it, like just like getting the configuration to be more powerful and flexible, right? So like it goes back to like there's only, if you do it based on the API, there's only going to be one generator, right? And maybe Brian, you actually have more knowledge on this particular thing than I do, right? But like my vision would be like what you actually want is you want different, like you want a generator that gives you a deployment with a config map with a secret all wired together in a specific way, right? And then you give it the name and then it makes sure that name exists in all the places, right? And that would be like one sort of archetypal thing you get with some different things that you fill in, like in sort of an imperative template hybrid. Or you may want like something else that's a different set of resources like that, or you may want just a deployment, right? But with an init container filled in. And so that I think like what is really going to be best for folks is to develop like a canonical set of those sort of patterns, and have them, registered dynamically either through the API server or just like published in container images. And that you say instead of kubectl create deployment with the image, you'd say kubectl create and then just give it the image, and then it expands the thing and then applies some set of arguments that are registered dynamically through that.
There's
But
the
that's
other, yeah, I would like to cut the discussion, and there's one action item that I could take is I've seen the CKA exam being mentioned not once by now, and maybe we could reach out to, I think that's Linux Foundation that's behind the exam, and work with them so that they accept the fact that kubectl run is not existent at this point in time, and so that it is more towards the proper usage of kubectl, because if the exam is pushing people towards run, that's wrong, and we are in the power in the right spot to actually enforce not to use run.
I don't know that they officially tell you to do that, but a lot of the prep material tells, like third-party prep says to do that.
Okay.
Just
I think if you guys remember when I actually first met you all and you asked me what I thought kubectl needed, I actually brought this up and I said kubectl needs to generate a scaffold of a deployment or a service and just shit out the YAML that you can then go and modify. Right, so I brought this up like a year ago when I met you guys, and I think it still reigns true today, especially if that's what the CK the exam is like. Every developer. So I work with beginners, right? Like that's what I do as a developer advocate. Is I usually work with beginners and teach them Kubernetes, and the biggest problem that I see people get started struggling with is getting a blank YAML manifest to start filling in, right? If we don't want them to use create, run, and all those other generator commands, we need to give them another tool that will give them, hey, here's the YAML that you can go fill out with all the fields that you care about. So maybe this calls for another top level kubectl command. Right? Maybe we should investigate like opening a KEP for that, right? Because that's exactly what Corey said he was doing, was he was doing kubectl create YAML dry run to, and then modifying the resulting YAML. So I see this every day when I work with people, and it sounds like it's true for people in other positions as well.
I agree with what you're saying, Eddie. I think that's what I was trying to communicate. I don't think I communicated it well, but what I was trying to suggest is that the create commands are wrong. Like we probably want to be spitting out YAML, and we probably want to be spitting out YAML that we're more thoughtful about because humans are going to be looking at it. And we probably want to be thinking about what types of YAML we want to be spitting out, because what are like the common patterns people are doing. And we probably want to do that as a separate sub-project so that people can iterate on it and don't have to wait 3 months to get a release, but really 4 months when you consider like that you have to get the code in and get it into a release and all that sort of stuff. So I agree with that. I think it requires like someone has to like pick up that torch of like carrying that vision, right? Like I think Machi and I can kind of give direction on kind of like here's the
there's
general
Kubernetes
approaches, but
there's Kubernetes 6. The simplest that I can think of is we can fire up a SIG sponsor project for Generate, publish that as a plugin through Crew, and see the response. And
then we can pull it in, like if it's successful and people like it,
exactly,
then we can just like pull the thing in. And if we do this well, we can vendor it instead of having to there's enough supporting customized libraries now that manipulate YAML without using the forbidden Kubernetes libraries that we could do this as a sub project and then vendor it in at a point where it hit beyond alpha maturity.
Oh yeah, I'm all in for that one actually.
So the question is, what do we do about like in the meantime, right? Because if we don't have that, then this issue is going to just keep popping up, and we're going to keep seeing folks wanting to expand the scope of the existing create commands.
So the FAQ is already an item that Eddie will be picking, and then Eddie, you want to start with your first SIG sponsor project?
Yeah, I was thinking I can take that on because it's something I've needed from the very beginning of Kubernetes. I created the FAQ. I put it in the bullet point there.
Yeah, and then the FAQ will be just a pointer. Here's the plugin that we're working on that does this for you. If you feel like it, help with it, and try to push this one forward, and we will see where we are in a couple of more months.
So Corey, since you put this PR together, would you be willing to help, instead of adding functionality to the existing create commands, help Eddie with fleshing out a new set of generator commands that you can have a lot more input into the vision and really apply your use cases and target them at that, with the intention that once they hit a appropriate level of maturity, they could then be pulled into the kube control as a new subcommand group?
I think that's a great idea, and that's definitely along the lines of something I would be interested in working on, and something that would fit my use cases. I guess totally okay shifting the conversation to focus on that, but like in my mind, for kubectl create, all of the options that exist that allow you to modify a deployment for whatever it's used, and having environment variables is something that is like, to me, still kind of core. And doing set end or outputting the YAML and then editing it, it's still something that's not one step. And I'm totally whatever we decide to do is something that I agree with. I would be okay with, given that the conversation of what you had just mentioned. But yeah, it's still, to me, kind of I guess inside, it's just something that I feel like it's core to modifying deployment if you were to use create. But yeah,
I think if you and Eddie, I don't disagree with what you're saying. I think if you and Eddie are successful, all the create commands don't make sense anymore. Like what you will have done will just be better.
Yeah.
And so we'll deprecate them. And if that's the case, then I don't think I feel strongly about one way or another if we add the environment or not, because our intent is to replace the entire command set.
Yeah,
but yeah, I hear what you're saying. Like if you view the create commands as the generator approach, as the like bless generator approach, then like having an environment as part of the I want to generate some YAML makes sense to me. If you view the create commands as effectively like a a way to not generate the full YAML, but maybe like just get a deployment up and running with a couple that's not intended to really be fully functional, but just get you like a foothold that then you would modify.
Yeah.
But I'm less convinced, I guess. I think the original intent a long time ago, I was like advocating for what you are, and I wanted the create commands to be like parity with run. And the discussion that came out of that with other folks in Kubernetes was that like these create commands are supposed to basically just give you the most bare minimum thing that can run, and then you should use like set commands or other commands to then do the other pieces. So that's something to think about too, I guess. Mache, do you have any strong feelings about, do you think we should defer, like, should we just see how far we get with the sub project and then defer this until we have a better idea on what the future looks like, or do you feel strongly about other things?
I'm definitely in favor of. We've had this conversation for a year, maybe 2 by now, since we. I think I've seen so much hate around my name when I announced deprecation of run, and then another wave when I actually removed the functionality, that I'm definitely in favor of this approach. That's my life mission, to protect create as much as I can. But I do see this, this is a problem, and it's not like that I'm completely ignoring. I'm very frequently doing what Brian said. I'm gonna create -o YAML, and then I'm gonna tweak it. Or alternatively, I have a directory on my in my workspace where I keep a handful of, I don't know, deployments, jobs, whatever I'm using for testing. And I'm just copying and tweaking that one particular piece of YAML, and then applying.
So how about this? I know we used like the whole meeting on this, but it's an important topic, and I'm glad we have these people here. And I apologize to anyone who had other items on the agenda and they're waiting here. And
the other one is similar to this one, honestly, and it's pretty simple answer: no.
So, Corey, how about this? I want to defer just making a decision on this. I think it's a really contentious issue, and I don't want to like. I think maybe just seeing. Let's come back to it, because this meeting's gone on a bit, and I think we could have another just follow-up discussion after we kind of meditated on what's happened here. But why don't we're definitely want to do the sub project. Sounds like Eddie's willing to lead the charge on that. If you could, if you want to participate in that with him, and then help contribute your vision to what these commands should look like, I think that's something we can move on now. And then to the extent like, do we want to add environment flags? Let's like revisit that in a week or two after we have the sub project set up. Does that work for you?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, cool. So we still have about 6 minutes left, and the other topic is the infamous get all, which pretty much falls in the same category as the create commands. Eddie, you want to talk about it, or I can quickly say what it is about and why we don't want to do it?
No, we can punt it. I created the FAQ. Let's start filling it out, and then I'll open a PR and get it merged as a markdown document right in the root of the kubectl directory, so everyone can see it. And we can also link to it right in Brian's GitHub template that he created, so it'll be right there. But yeah, we can punt this for next time, or the FAQ discussion.
I mean, basically the topic itself is pretty simple. People want to
It
have,
all should use the discovery service, right? Is that basically it?
get all. And that's not quite get all that each and every single person wants to see. And theoretically, the all alias is controlled on the server and not in the client. We used to have it hard-coded in kubectl, but once we move the majority of the functionality of the server over to the server, this can be easily tweaked. And Chris nicely pointed out that there is a plugin that is available in Crew, get all, which does that particular thing. So the all is just unfortunate misuse of word, and it
Get some.
just, yeah. And get all was all actually at the beginning of Kubernetes, but as we grew the other resources, it just wasn't added to the all. And all, I think Jordan commented in several issues that we are not going to fix it, and he put the reasons why behind it. So yeah, that's definitely another topic for our fact that no, we're not interested in doing this, because get all will behave differently on a different server, and that's something that it's hard for us to debug then.
Can we
That's
get all completely, just remove it? Is that possible? Or should we? Is that a good idea or not?
It's definitely something that we could consider. And probably we should start doing. I'll sync with the SIG API machinery about it, because that particular alias exists on the server. So we would just need to ensure that they start deprecating it and remove it eventually. But yeah, that's definitely a good idea.
Hey, Eddie and Corey, just a quick follow-up. You could just start in the CLI utils repo. It's already there for kind of this sort of stuff anyway. Like looking at what's in there, it's like mostly next generation kube control commands. Like there's apply and preview and diff and some in status. So I think it fits within that scope.
okay. I was going to ping you anyways to find the process for spinning all that up. Just real quick to tie the loop. Sorry?
What's that?
Oh, Sean
What's
says,
that?
or CLI experimental.
Yeah, that's an option too. I mean, it depends on how, you know, how committed we are to this. You could start an experimental with probably no concern at all, and then move it to utils if you wanted. That there's some vendoring concerns around which way dependencies can go and which arrows work too. So I'm sure we're gonna have to move the code between repos at some point anyway.
We'll probably just start as a plugin, so we don't have to build kubectl to test it out. But real quick, to close the loop on the get all one, that's totally fine. I want to make sure we have a lot of issues, and I know everyone's really busy, but we have a lot of issues that like have a ton of attention. Like this one had a bunch of comments and thumbs up on it, and then the Feta bot just kind of closed it, and people are like, "Why is this closed? Reopen it." So one of the things I'm just making sure we do is like close the loop on all of these issues, so the community has an answer. So that's why I brought this one up here.
Oh no, that's definitely a reasonable thing. Thanks, Eddie. Okay. I think we reached top of the hour, so we can close the discussions at this point in time.
Is there anything you wanted to get in that we didn't, and we need to make sure we follow up on, or something like that? Just so we can put it and say like this wasn't discussed, but it's important that we discuss it next time, since the folks were here.
If you come up with something like that we missed, anytime over the next 2 weeks, feel free to add it to the feature topics in the agenda. As soon as you think about it, that's probably the best option that we cover it next time. Okay. Thank you very much all, and stay safe, and see you in 2 weeks. Thank you. Bye.
Everyone, thanks.
Thanks, team.
See you guys.